What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. It is Monday after Major 1, so you know what this means. It is time for the tier list. Toronto Ultra beat Atlanta FaZe in the grand finals of your Major 1 event at Boston. Shout out to the boys of Toronto. They played insane really the entire month of January, but let's break down kind of how all teams rank. I'm also going to kind of give you some early sort of roster mania thoughts. Teams I think are going to change. Teams I think they are going to probably stick for this major, at least for the beginning. So let's dive in and take a look how all 12 teams rank. All right, so we're going to kind of actually restart the tier list from the start. I want to show you where I started from before this event, and it wasn't like, I think, super far off. You know, a couple of misses here. New York obviously had a very disappointing event. We'll get to that. Miami had a very disappointing event. The other four teams we got near the top here, FaZe and Toronto, I think we nailed. Optic and Seattle about, you know, where we expected. We had Minnesota above a bunch of teams. I felt good about that. And then the bottom five, I mean, we'll get to. So there were a couple misses here. I think New York probably the biggest one, in Miami, but I think most people would have had them pretty high on their list going into this event. As always, this is kind of how I do it. It's always a little bit different from some people. And I also want to lay out the criteria for how I'm doing it, because I think it's gonna be a little bit different for this tier list and then probably the next one I do after some changes get made. So Sunday regulars are going to, I think for the sake of this video, probably be the top two teams in the game. We'll get to who the top two are. I don't think it's any secret, but these are two teams I like right now expect to probably get top three, top four at every event this year. Potential contenders is going to be probably one team right now. It's really a mess right now in the CDL, but usually there's a couple of teams here that I think are, you know, have the ability to win an event, but are likely going to be in that top four, top six range. It's really going to depend on matchups, but they're like good. They're not going to need to make a change. They're in good spots for qualifying for champs, but like I said, right now it's a little bit murky, and I think there's one team that's there. The next two categories, for the sake of this video, because I think it's kind of a mess at the bottom of the standings, work to do are teams that either played okay at this event or didn't play well, but I think they're going to stick, or I think it's like very 50-50 if they're going to make a roster change in my mind. And then missing pieces are teams 100% I think will make a roster change. So please keep that in mind while watching this video. Whoever posts this on Reddit, make sure you give the context here for when this get posted about how I'm doing the list this time around. My thesis on it is I think to rank, especially the bottom 6 or 7 teams right now, is very difficult. I think it's super day to day. I think we're about to play on a new patch with new spawns, potentially a new map coming in Rio. And I think there's going to be a lot of shuffle. So I think for the clarification of this specific list, I want to break the bottom out as far as teams I think that are going to be like changing and teams are not going to be changing. Let's start at the top. We're going to put Toronto Ultra, Seattle Whips. We're going to put Toronto Ultra. We're going to put Atlanta FaZe here, and let's talk about these two teams. So these were your grand finalists at this event. Toronto, as I alluded to in the beginning of this episode, have been on an absolute tear since they got slammed by Boston before Christmas. They have lost 4 maps since the beginning of the year. 1 to Vegas, 1 to Thieves, and 2 to Atlanta FaZe across the winners finals and in grand finals. I've just been on an insane run. They're great every game mode. Their teamwork looks phenomenal right now. There's just really nothing to criticize Toronto about. This is just a very clean team. I think I agree with what Ake said. Really in the last 6 or 7 months, I think this team made a good job making, I think, the best roster change. Mind you, I think that was, you know, because of the upside and the change that they made and sort of the floors of other teams. Toronto, I thought Hicksy was a good player, but bringing Envoy in has really completed this team, and they're going to be a force the entire year for sure. Which is better, because last year they were at times, you know, event to event, sometimes a little bit inconsistent, but they got better at the end of the year. I think Toronto is, you know, time for a big one so far. And Atlanta FaZe is sort of the next team, and my kind of feeling on FaZe is they do have stuff to work on. I think unlike Toronto, in which all 4 players are firing at 100% right now, Atlanta FaZe, I mean, to be honest, I think, you know, Draza, we haven't seen the best of him yet. I think we haven't seen the best of Abizi. Yet this team, when they had issues throughout the weekend, whether it was, you know, losing close hard points, losing close S&Ds, they grind out their ability to get top 2 at this event. And that's what you've seen, I think, with this franchise. When they haven't always brought their A+ game, this team is still like a lock to get at least top 4, top 3, top 2 at every tournament. They just have this bad history now of being the second best team on like most weekends in the CDL. It's crazy. It's a crazy problem. I don't think I've ever seen this really in esports of a team. I mean, other than maybe Astralis and old TSM and CSGO many years ago, of this Atlanta FaZe team. I mean, they're super consistent, but they got to stop being consistent, getting second, and start getting some wins. But I like where they've started so far this year. They're really, really good in search. The only team that's really holding a candle to them in S&D right now is Toronto. Outside of that, they've been pretty much flawless against everybody else in the game mode. Got some things to work on with Hardpoint, but again, we're going to see a big change in how the game is going to play going forward. So we'll see. They're always kind of FaZe to adapt to new patches, and the control looks much improved from last year. So if you're a FaZe fan, look, disappointing weekend because your standards are super high, but this team's getting like right now is going to be making it to every Sunday. I've outside of unless they have a terrible weekend, like they are primed to be up there with Toronto. So potential contenders right now, I'm only putting one team there, which is Optic Texas. And I would say for Optic Texas fans, I would not be disappointed with this weekend. Coming in this weekend, it felt like there were some fundamental issues with this team that they had to figure out. And I think it is extremely typical in my eyes, because it's the beginning of the season, that they were able to be competitive in this tournament, be better than the rest, which is like another like 9 teams down there. And the only team that they really faltered to this weekend was Atlanta FaZe. We've now beat them in 3 straight. It's kind of weird with this rivalry. It just seems to go back and forth with one team kind of owning it. But right now, I think the difference between FaZe and Optic is FaZe is the better S&D team. And to be candid with Optic, to me, that's their weakest game mode. We talked last night on the flank that it's sort of systemic to other modes as well, where they get into issues. Like that first map, Terminal Hardpoint, that they played against FaZe, where this Optic team has a little bit of a sort of pacing issue. They haven't yet figured out how to get the best out of Shotzi, Dashy sometimes. I think Kenny's come in and played really well. Pride's come in and played really well. But they've got to tweak a little bit of their system. But they're in a really good starting point right now. The S&D, though, to me, has to be cleaned up. 10 searches, losses. And I know some of those were gritty, like game 11s, round 11s, rather, in the beginning of the year. But S&D wins chips. And right now, I'm going to be honest with you, this Optic Texas team does not seem like a good search team. So they need to work on that game mode, among other things. And also take advantage, again, new patch. Everybody's going to probably start scrimming tomorrow on Tuesday. Got to hit the ground running, outgrind other teams, and get yourself up a category because you have the talent to do it. Just got to put in the work, and it will happen for sure. All right. So now we get to the fun part. Teams that have work to do that I don't think are going to make a change. First off, the New York Subliners. An extremely disappointing event for New York. By the way, before we get into this, I'm yet to know how I'm going to kind of order these next 2 categories. So off the rip, I think I'm just going to kind of like do it by teams in my confidence level in each category as far as like making a change, not making a change. And then we'll kind of maybe order it. I'll try to at some level, but again, it's murky. And I think I'm going to do another tier list after all the changes are in it based on like ranking the teams, probably like early next week. Anyway, New York is a team for me that had an incredibly disappointing weekend. This team is too talented to get double first rounded. By Minnesota, they got 3-0'd, and then they lost to Carolina. And I think to me, with this New York team, this is what I was concerned about. They were 9-1 coming in S&D in this tournament, and they lost 2 searches, and they weren't able to grind up the series into 5 and be able to, take advantage of that good game 5 record they have. And their shaky respawn, especially control, really reared its ugly head. I know they did win the Karachi control against Carolina. And they did go 0-3 in hardpoint this weekend, but for me, across the whole stage, I think control was probably their weakest game mode. They were able to win some hardpoints here and there, but it kind of caught up to them this weekend. I don't really know how to diagnose New York's problems. I think some of it is, they have kind of a tricky map pool right now. They have a tough time because they're taking Team B in these series, winning the other team's hardpoint pick. And so I just think counting on trying to go game 5 and winning these searches is going to be really difficult. I think they need to figure out and hop on this new patch and figure out some of the chemistries, pacing issues I think they have between their ARs and subs. I think Hydra does make some great plays for them, but they haven't yet. And we've talked about this with plenty of SMGs. Kismet did not have a great stage. They need to figure out how to get more out of Kiz. Dante has been super up and down, but he's always been like that in his career. How do you get him to play consistent like he did in that one event that the Seattle team won at Toronto in Vanguard? I think New York can figure it out. But for now, I don't see them making a change. They have too much talent on this team. You're going to give it some time. But dead last is just unacceptable for this team. Unacceptable. All right. Next up, I have the Minnesota Rocker. A typical top 4 placing for Minnesota. That is huge in the champs race. Getting the 75 points they got during the split is going to go a long way into them getting into champs, which I think they're going to still be in the fight for, because I think a number of teams are going to play better. For me, I think that, yes, they did get the benefit of some upsets, but you only play the people in front of you. And this weekend, they beat New York, lost to Toronto, beat LAG, and lost to Optic. It is what it is, but they won the series they needed to win in order to get a top 4 placing. And that's just how it is, because a lot of teams are kind of weak in this sort of a big hodgepodge of teams at the bottom, but you get the points where you can get them. I thought this weekend, for Minnesota. They got a pretty decent weekend out of accuracy. They got a pretty decent weekend at times at a big wake. Linz is phenomenal. That kid is unbelievable. That is a great pickup for Minnesota in the offseason. He's definitely right now, for me, the front runner for Rookie of the Year. And, you know, Reese played well online for them, and I think carried them at times during this little win streak they had coming into this event when they were sort of rattling up off, 4 wins coming in, but 3 wins coming in rather. He didn't have the best events this weekend. I think for Minnesota still, for me, they were playing really good going in this tournament and taking those game ones and sort of carrying that momentum. But you see sort of this weekend, once they started losing those game ones, they weren't always the most dominant search team. Their control is not too bad. Sort of 500 in the game mode. It's sort of a coin flippy thing for them. But I'm looking it up. What's their game 4 record so far this year? 1-6 in game 4s is a little bit of a red flag for me right now, because if they're not winning those game 1s, which are 7-4 so far this season, again, they want a little bit of a win streak to kind of catch up on that. Now you look at it, if they're losing the game 1s, they're not super good on game 4. I don't know, a little bit inconsistencies, but I don't see this Minnesota team making a change. And I think looking forward to the next stage here, we're going to learn a lot about this team, because these are their opponents in stage 2 here. Toronto, Optic, Boston, FaZe, LA Thieves, Seattle, and Miami. Minnesota has a very difficult schedule for stage 2. I don't expect them to make a change. It could be difficult for them to replicate this performance next stage. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. So let's see how they play in the next couple of weeks. All right, so another team I'm gonna put, and again, I don't know how to rank all these teams, but a team I don't think that's gonna make a change is LAG. They got top 6 at this tournament, losing to FaZe, beating Thieves, beating Vegas, and losing to Minnesota. So got some decent points out of the split. They're sitting on 50. They're sitting in a champ spot. This team has been kind of battling all stage. They are fighters. The problem with this team is they find ways to lose maps they should win. They are not a good S&D team. And so my thing on LAG is, because of the org situation, I don't think they're going to make a change. I thought this weekend, Fame, who was their weakest player, actually kind of played the best this weekend of everybody on the team. I do think that between Diamond Con and Assault, in my personal opinion right now, I do think they should make a change and drop one of those guys, probably Adam Assault, but I don't think they're going to. So let's see kind of how they navigate the org situation, and maybe pressure eventually gets to them and they maybe do drop and pick up someone. I don't know. But right now, I don't expect them to make a change for this next split. Looking at their schedule for this split, I actually think that they have a chance to make winners bracket again. They play Vegas, Optic, Seattle, Carolina, New York, LA Thieves, and FaZe. So I think there's 3 wins in there if they play the way they played this stage. But S&D, they got to improve on it. They're not a good team in that game mode, and it's not gonna make them move up a tier, because I don't care how decent prepared they are, how deep their map pool can be at sometimes. They can't win searches. They're not going to be a real contender. So. For now, they're in this set. All right, we got 6 teams left. Do any of these teams I think are going to stick? Okay, so I'm going to put Miami in this tier. It's been a kind of a wild journey for this Miami team. They've just been kind of streaky now, if you look at how stage 1 went. They rattled off 3 straight to begin. Then they lost to Seattle and Boston. And then last week of the online portion of the stage, they beat Optic and LAG in dominant fashion. And we're like, okay, this team might be real. Then they came to the event and lost to Optic and lost to Vegas and didn't win a single map. So I don't know what to think of this Miami team. Are they just, a team with good teamwork and they're just super inconsistent in getting to that level? They're 500 across hardpoint, S&D, and control. They actually look pretty good at before they came into this weekend. This is the hardest team for me to read, because it just seems like they are so day-to-day, so streaky, but you can see the potential is there for them to challenge anybody. They have Eric Boom on their bench, and so maybe they think about calling Eric up, but I just don't really know the thinking on that team. That's why I'm putting them there. And their stage 2 is, they're another team that's got a tough start. Listen to this. Toronto and FaZe, first 2 matches. Not going to be easy. Then they have Vegas, LA Thieves, New York, and Carolina and Rutgers. So the back end of the stage has some opportunities. Miami, with this current team, should be able to get 2 or 3 wins at minimum against that group. I don't see the result against Toronto and FaZe right now. Will they? Who knows? Because they're super streaky. We're going to see if this team is going to figure it out. We'll see if this team make a change. There's a lot of teams play this category, because I don't know if they're going to, but a very disappointing weekend for Miami. And hopefully they can kind of turn around and find some consistency in the results here. Also, a crazy Miami stat before we finish. A crazy Miami stat I just looked up. So I was pretty confident about this, but I just looked it up. Won the monitor for this stage. If Miami win game 2, so far this season, they are 5-0. Oftentimes they've won the first map in those sets. When they've lost game 2, They're 0-4. So this team is very streaky, it seems like, in winning that search. It's early. Let's keep a track of that stat, but I found that very interesting. I think all 5 of these teams, in my mind, should make a change. Just again, people are going to post this tier list and they're going to look at like be putting Seattle below Miami and LAG and Minnesota and New York and be like, but I'm telling you, I'm trying to kind of like with this tier list kind of show you where I think some of the teams rank. I honestly think all 9 of these teams all kind of are sort of in a hodgepodge situation right now. And I think Seattle and Boston should maybe be higher than some of the teams, but it just because I think they're going to make changes. And let's start with Seattle then. They kind of battled sort of a decent kind of position in this tournament, but I think there are some major limitations with this team. So they got off the bat, they got 3-0'd by Toronto, sent to losers bracket. They beat Boston to get in the top 8. Kind of sort of banged that one out. It was a game 5 kind of grinder. They beat Carolina in a game 5 to get top 6, and then they lost to Optic. So 6 is not like too bad, but they really did not look great, and they haven't looked great all stage against Optic, FaZe, or Toronto, and that's really the mark for the Seattle team. Like, I just think they are not a particularly good respawn team across both game modes, hardpoint and control. This split, they went 9-for-22. They're not even 500, about 30%, let's say. I might be off like a couple percent on that, but you guys get my point. Like, they're not going to consistently kind of win these series 3-0 in dominant fashion right now with their map pool. They're 7-2 on terminal, but you take that out of the play. They're bad on sub base. They're bad on Skid Row. They don't have a great Karachi record. They don't have a great invasion record. They are weak on a lot of the other maps in the pool when you get terminal out of the way. And so this team needs to figure out how to get a deeper map pool. And to be honest, for me, and I hate to say it because I think Alec is a nice guy, but I just think that going forward for this team, I really think that they should use this week to make a change. Replace Alec for me for probably Kremp. I think Asim would also be a potentially good ad. Really someone who is normally a sub player, but kind of plays sort of a third AR in this game, who can run with Hook, set pace, move Abuza back to more of a traditional kind of what we call the flex role, but really sort of that setup AR role, a fast AR role. And I think this team in respawn is going to get significantly better and not get worse in S&D by doing so. So that's what I think Seattle should do. Do I think they're going to make a change? I hope so. This camp can be a little bit weird. They don't really kind of talk about their decisions. There's not a lot of leaks to come out about the camp. And so I could see a role where they maybe keep Alec. I just think I would take advantage of the change right now because I just don't see how the Seattle team is going to instantly get better in respawn. I just don't see the upside there. All right, the next team I think should make a change is the Boston Breach. And they got last at their own tournament, which obviously not ideal starting in losers bracket and losing Seattle in a game 5. It's a maddening team and a very difficult team to watch and very frustrating for me because I see the potential there, what they're trying to do. They've grinded out a decent amount of series this year. I don't think they're on the class right now or caliber with where Snoopy's at his development that they're going to be like beating Toronto, FaZe, or Optic on the regular, but the 3-0 or the 0-3 rather in game 5s is very concerning to me. They are a decent control team, so I'll give them that. Like they have the ability to grind out these series, but to me, unfortunately, I do think they should drop Capsule. I think Cap has a lot of potential. He's normally a takeover player in Search, but right now in this game, he's not. He made a lot of mistakes, I think, in that series against Seattle. He made a lot of mistakes, I think, in the game 5 against New York. He made a lot of mistakes, I think, in the game 5 against FaZe. And I just think at this point, I don't see how through his entire career he's had that same problem. I just don't see how on this team he's going to get better at that. I think for Boston, their best strat this season, I think, is to bring in an Asim or Kremp, or I actually say Eric too, but I just don't think, I don't think Miami's going to let Eric go. But like, I would say, Kremp or Asim, again, someone who is a sub player who's kind of running a third AR, to kind of be a setup guy to Snoop, who I think has a lot of really good potential, but he does overchow, but that's okay. You can work with that. One guy overchowing your team, you can kind of make that work and get good placings. I think if they can kind of play a lot of discipline and get discipline behind Snoop, I think they'll get better at Search and they'll get better in respawn as well. Because I don't think this team is bad. I just think the lack of like quality decision making in Search is really holding back this team. And probably like two extra map game 5 map wins, and subsequently 2 extra series wins, and probably a better place to get this event. So I expect Boston to make a change, unfortunately, for Capsule. Carolina is an interesting one. I know that they made, 2 changes before this event, and I respect that. Bringing in Fellow, bringing in TJ, and they really sort of were sort of grinding it out this weekend, but only got as far as top 8. They beat New York, which is an incredible result. Then they lost to Seattle. I just don't think with this team, with this comp right now, that it's going to really get any better than where they're at. They are just a terrible search team. And I know, look, I know they have a new, they bricked a fellow in TJ. They didn't have time to work on S&D or Savant, but they weren't good at S&D with their other team. Even with this team, I don't, I know they've historically like solid S&D players with fellow and TJ, but it doesn't always work that way. I would have thought with, Capital on Boston, with how good Preston and Austin have been in Simon's search, they would get better. It may not in this game. It may not click. And so I do think that Carolina should look at the market. Unfortunately, I don't think that they're a primo destination. So I think they should change, but I can see them sticking if the players they want end up going to Boston or Seattle or another one of the teams I'm about to mention, who I think are better long-term destinations for these teams. I would say they should make a change, but they might not, because they may not be able to get the players they want, and they may stay patient for a little bit. They have 25 points. They do need to try and catch it up in this next stage. And it is a kind of potentially a tricky one. New York, Boston, Seattle, Optic, LAG, and Miami, and Vegas is like, you're avoiding FaZe in Toronto, but there are a lot of teams that are kind of in the same pack as them that have a little bit more skill than they do. I think they're going to need to be really disciplined to get ahead to try and get 3 wins. Starting winners bracket will really key for this team, because they can grind out a couple of series in losers and get like a top 6 at Florida, but we'll see what they do. These next 2 teams should 100% make a change. And if they don't, I really just don't know what they're thinking. I think they're in denial. One is LA Thieves. Came to this event, lost to LAG. I don't know what it is with LA Thieves, but they just cannot beat LAG, this franchise. This isn't, and at this point, it seemed like a phase with Optic up until this year. I just don't really understand why the Thieves team just plays completely differently against LAG. And for the Thieves team, to me, that's emblematic of why I think they should make a change, because they're playing and losing this LAG team. It's not a good search team. It's not a great or amazing hardpoint respawn team. And you would think then Thieves can maybe grind these out game 5, but they've only taken 1 map in the 2 series against LAG. And to be honest, in both those series, they've lost S&Ds to LAG, and the only map they won is a Control. And for LA Thieves, I think, Control is their best game mode, which I want to tip. They're 5-3 in it. So I think that's super respectable. But 1-12, they've won 1 of 13 hardpoints they played this split. Is insane. It's truly a remarkable stat. Their S&D is okay. If you dive in on the stats on it, they're just an average S&D team. They're not terrible. They're not amazing. They're just okay. And I think you put that package together, their next split is really difficult. They play Optic, Miami, Minnesota, FaZe, Vegas, LAG, and Toronto. So they're going to play FaZe Optic in Toronto, which I don't expect them to win, either one of those right now. So they're going to have to take 3 out of 4 between Miami, who can be a difficult out, Rocker, who I think right now are going to be not an easy team for this one to beat, Vegas, who I think is winnable, and LAG, who they can't beat. So I don't know. I look at that schedule and I'm like, Thieves right now, if they don't make a change, they're getting losers again, and they're sitting on 20 points. The bottom of the league. Can you really sit here? Can you really sit here and have another bad stage where you only get 20 points? Because then you're going to have to basically get top four at the next 2 events. I just don't see it for this Thieves team. I really think, in my mind, I think they should make 2 changes. I think Dan Ghost is the only one on the team that I think I feel safe in. But between Joe DeCease, Afro, and Cam, I think at least 2 of those players should go. So we'll see what Thieves do. If they don't make a change, I'm going to be so unbelievably mind blown, and I would love to know the reason for the decision, because all the data, the schedule, all that supports they really ought to get it done now before they slip too far behind. And the last team I think they should make a change is Vegas. I think this one's obvious. I think Purge is sort of the weak link on this team. Maybe they make a second change, but I think at minimum Purge should go. They start off decent S&D, but kind of really slipped. They're not a great hardpoint team. Control, I know they started winning a couple at the end, but 2-7 this split. I mean, that's not particularly great at this tournament. Listen, they beat Miami 3-0, which I thought was a very respectable victory, to be honest. I kind of took Vegas for that. But they lost in the game 5 to LAG. Maybe it's kind of unfair again with these rankings that I put Vegas last. Again, I just want to be clear with this tier list, and I'm sure it's going to get clipped. This isn't, especially with the bottom 9, I'm not ranking these in any order. Maybe I should just do, in no order, just so it's very clear what I'm thinking here, that I just think that they should make a change along with the other 4 teams in this group. I just don't see it. I don't really see how they're going to consistently get results to this team They have won 2 series. And yes, one of those was a nice victory against Miami, and one was a nice game 5 against Rocker. They tossed a couple of these, got reverse swept 3 times, including at this tournament. That is a huge problem. That is because they cannot win control. Being reverse swept 3 times in 9 series is insane to me. And I just don't know how you look at that and don't think you can make a change. And I expect Vegas to make, I think I could accept if they make one change, drop purge, pick up another AR and just kind of keep it moving and grooving and see how it happens. I'm fine with that. But if they don't make a change, I'll be mind blown. So yeah, this is the list. Top 3. I think that's pretty good. I think New York, I'd like to move up a tier, but getting dead last at a tournament is not going to allow me to do so. But I think very quickly, I think they'll work their way back up to potential contenders. And then the rest of the 7, and again, it's not really to me in like much of an order right now. I just think 5 teams in my mind should make a change. I think Miami's kind of on the fence if they'll rotate their sub in, so it might be 6, but they're not really picking anybody up with that change. I think you can make an argument that maybe LAG should make a change, drop down to Assault, but I don't think they will for org situations. And I think Minnesota should stick it at least for now, and kind of keep this grinding out. So that's how I think stack up. I just think this league right now is sort of FaZe Toronto, big gap, Optic, big gap, and then everybody else. We'll see if teams like New York can get back up there. I'm excited to see if teams make changes this week. I'm excited to see they look on the new patch, and we'll probably make another tier list next week once all the changes are in and we kind of have new confirmed rosters. But this is my thinking right now after this event. And again, the bottom 9, I keep saying this in the video, the bottom 9 is very much not in a very specific order. The 4 teams have work to do, I think, are going to either stick or very like 25-75 making a change. And the bottom 5 are teams I think that 100% should make a change. So yeah, that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm sure you guys have a lot of thoughts. Like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content. We'll be covering a lot more, I think, roster mania this week. So be on the lookout for that. And as always, we'll see you guys on the next one.